become emotionally invincible. Marcus Aurelius reveals how. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that nothing could disturb your peace. Not insults, not rejection, not failure, not even the fear of death. Imagine being able to walk through the chaos of life with the calm of a mountain. That's not a fantasy. That's what Marcus Aurelius was training himself to do every single day. And he left behind the blueprint. The Roman emperor wasn't just a ruler, he was a philosopher warrior, journaling in the middle of wars, betrayals and plagues, trying to answer one question: how do I stay unshaken, no matter what the world throws at me? Let's start with the brutal truth. Life is not fair. People will lie about you. Opportunities will vanish. Loved ones will die. Your health will fail. And if your inner peace depends on the outside world being kind, predictable, and just then you are permanently hostage to forces you can't control. That's the emotional vulnerability we all live with. But Marcus Aurelius flipped the script. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That one quote could change your life if you actually lived it. Because it means your emotional invincibility isn't a fantasy. It's a discipline, a skill, a way of perceiving.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
We all chase peace, but in the wrong direction. We think we'll feel safe when we get the promotion, the partner, the praise. But that's not peace, that's temporary relief. It's like building your house on a boat. You might decorate it beautifully, but the waves still control you. Marcus teaches us to build on bedrock, but to anchor our emotional state not on how things go, but on how we respond. And that starts with one powerful idea: nothing is good or bad unless you decide it is. That's not just Stoic poetry, it's neuroscience. Your brain doesn't respond to events. It responds to your interpretation of events. And interpretation is a choice. Think about that. You lose your job. Most people panic. But is that panic automatic? Or is it a result of a thought, I'm worthless now, or I'll never recover? The event didn't create suffering. Your judgment did. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That's the core of emotional invincibility. The power to change your estimate, the ability to pause and say, wait, what story am I telling myself about this? And is it the only one? But this isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about understanding it. Marcus didn't try to become a robot. He felt grief, anger, fear, but he didn't let those emotions sit in the driver's seat. He trained himself to notice the emotion, question the thought behind it, and then act from reason, not reaction. He was writing his meditations not to impress anyone, but to coach himself. Each page is a reminder, I felt rage today. But what good does rage do? Can I meet this moment as a human being, not a slave to impulse? That's the work, that's the training. And that's the path to invincibility, not because you never feel pain, but because pain never owns you. Here's a deep question to sit with. What if every moment of suffering in your life, every anxiety spiral, every heartbreak, every burst of anger was optional? Not in the sense that you could have avoided the event, but in the sense that you didn't have to suffer over it. What if suffering is not something life gives you, but something you give yourself by how you interpret life? Marcus teaches us to reclaim that power, but he reminds us that the universe doesn't owe us comfort. It doesn't owe us fairness or safety or even understanding. But we owe ourselves clarity. We owe ourselves presence. We owe ourselves mastery over the only territory we ever truly control, our own mind. So how do we begin? We begin by watching our judgments like a hawk. Every time something happens, we ask, what am I telling myself about this? Is this thought useful? Is it true? Is it leading me closer to freedom or deeper into slavery? That's how Marcus trained his mind, not by avoiding the storm, but by learning to stand still inside it. And slowly, piece by piece, he became unshakable. Not because the world got easier, but because he got stronger. You don't need a perfect life to be at peace. You need a trained mind. Marcus Aurelius didn't have a peaceful life. He had war, betrayal, illness, and death all around him. But he had a peaceful mind, and that peace wasn't given to him. He earned it. You can too. The fortress within, building the inner citadel that nothing can touch. Marcus Aurelius spoke of something powerful, something he called the inner citadel. It was his metaphor for the unshakable core of a human being, the place inside us that no insult can penetrate, no loss can destroy, no chaos can invade. He understood that the world outside is unpredictable, often cruel, and hopelessly out of our control. But within each of us is a space that can be governed, not by others, not by circumstance, but by our own reason, discipline, and choice. And once you've built this fortress within, you become emotionally invincible, not because bad things stop happening, but because they lose their power to destroy you. So, how do we begin building this inner citadel? First, we have to understand that it's not built out of stone. It's not made of ego or pride or toughness. It's built from clarity, from knowing what is truly yours and what never was. Marcus reminds us constantly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That's the blueprint. Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, those are your materials. Everything else, people's opinions, the weather, the economy, your past, those are the winds and the storms. You don't build a fortress to stop the wind. You build it so you can stand in it without being moved. The construction begins with radical honesty. You have to look at your own thoughts and ask, which of these are mine, and which are inherited lies? So many of us carry beliefs that were handed to us about success, about worth, about how we should react when someone disrespects us. But Marcus was constantly stripping those away. He journaled to remind himself, is this essential? Does this matter? Will this still be important on my deathbed? The inner citadel is built by subtracting, not adding. You don't need more armor, you need less illusion. Then comes discipline, the discipline of attention. Most people let their minds wander like wild animals. They chase every thought, react to every feeling, and call it being human. But Marcus teaches us that being human is something higher than that. It's the ability to direct your mind deliberately, and to see a thought like I'm not good enough, or they betrayed me, and not believe it automatically. To interrogate it, to ask, is this helping me live better? Or is it just noise? The inner citadel is not a place of repression. It's not where you lock up your emotions and pretend nothing hurts. No, it's where you meet your emotions with wisdom, where you can say, yes, I feel fear, but I am not fear. I am the observer of fear. That small shift, seeing yourself not as your emotion, but as the awareness behind it is everything. That's when you realize you are not the storm. You are the sky it passes through. And here's the secret Marcus knew. Once you've built that citadel, the world loses its grip on you. Someone insults you. That's their noise, not your truth. You're passed over for a promotion. That's their opinion, not your value. You lose everything you thought you needed. You still have the one thing you never truly needed to lose: your sovereignty. Your ability to choose how to think, how to act, how to respond. That is power. That is freedom. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Where do you retreat to when life attacks you? Do you have a place inside yourself that is steady, calm, untouched? Or do you collapse into fear, anger, blame? Because the truth is, the world will always test your walls. That's its nature. But if you've built your fortress on solid foundations, on values like reason, integrity, humility, and responsibility, then no force on earth can break you. Building this citadel isn't glamorous. It's not loud. It doesn't win you applause. In fact, most of it is invisible. It's you, alone, at night, facing your thoughts. It's you, in the heat of the moment, choosing not to lash out. It's you, carrying yourself with dignity when no one's watching. But over time, something miraculous happens. You start to feel untouchable, not because you're numb, but because you're anchored. Life still moves, but you are not moved by it. That's emotional invincibility. Marcus Aurelius wasn't born with it. He built it. Brick by brick, thought by thought, moment by moment. And so can you. Breaking the chains, how to free yourself from emotional slavery forever. Emotional slavery is the silent force that governs most people's lives. It's not a term we often use, but it perfectly describes the condition of being constantly pulled by external triggers: praise or criticism, gain or loss, attention or rejection. When your inner state rises and falls based on what happens outside of you, you are not free. You may look free, speak about independence, even believe you're your own person, but inside, you are shackled. Marcus Aurelius knew this, and unlike most emperors who clung to control over others, he sought mastery over himself. And to be free emotionally is not to feel nothing, but it's to feel everything without being ruled by it. It's being able to experience anger without becoming violence, and to feel sadness without collapsing into despair, to encounter fear and still move forward with clarity. But how many of us live that way? Most people are like puppets, tug the string of criticism and they react, pull the thread of anxiety and they spiral, dangle attention and they chase it. It's not because we're weak, it's because we've never been taught to see the strings, let alone cut them. So how do we begin breaking those chains? The first step, Marcus would say, is recognizing what you control. This is the foundation of Stoic philosophy. You don't control your body's health, but you control your attitude toward illness. You don't control other people's actions, but you control your response. You don't control the past, the future, or even your reputation, but you control the moral quality of your thoughts, the choices you make, and the meaning you assign to things. That's where your power lives. And the more you focus on what is not within that domain, the more enslaved you become. Ask yourself this: how much of my suffering is because I'm trying to control things I never truly could? Your partner's loyalty, your friend's opinion, your boss's respect, your audience's applause. When we attach our peace to things outside our influence, we hand them the keys to our emotional life. And then we wonder why we feel anxious, exhausted, betrayed. Marcus Aurelius understood this trap, and he trained himself daily to withdraw his sense of worth from what was not his to command. He wrote, "Don't hanker after what you don't have. Instead, fix your attentions on the finest and best that you have and imagine how much you'd long for these if they weren't in your possession." This isn't about settling, it's about sovereignty. You are not a beggar in the world's marketplace, hoping for scraps of validation. You are the ruler of your own mind. Why would you give that power away? But there's another chain we must break, the chain of identity. We often think, I'm just a jealous person, or I have a short temper, or I'm too sensitive. We confuse patterns with identity. But Marcus would tell us, you are not your emotions. You are not your past reactions. You are the faculty that notices, questions, and redirects those things. You are the thinker, not the thought. And that subtle shift in identity is the beginning of liberation. Freedom also means being able to disappoint others, not cruelly, but clearly, because people will always try to pull you into their emotional storms. They'll want you to mirror their fears, take on their anger, dance to their expectations. And if you don't have a firm grasp on your own values, you'll get swept away in their current. But Marcus Aurelius teaches us to live in alignment with nature, not other people's moods. But nature, in Stoic thought, means reason, virtue, and truth. So when someone tries to provoke you, you ask, what does nature require of me right now? Anger or patience? Revenge or wisdom? That question is a sword. It cuts through the noise. It breaks the chain. Because it reminds you who you really are, not a bundle of reactions, but a conscious being capable of choice. Emotional slavery ends not when the world becomes gentle, but when you become grounded. When you no longer need applause to feel worthy. When you stop chasing what you already are. When you choose peace, not because it's easy, but because it's right. The final victory. How to live like a philosopher in a world that's lost its mind. We live in a world of noise, constant, unrelenting noise. Social media arguments masquerade as wisdom. Outrage is rewarded. Shallow validation replaces deep meaning. Everyone is performing, reacting, chasing something: followers, fame, attention, approval. And in the middle of this digital storm, we often feel like we're drowning, pulled away from ourselves, away from clarity, away from peace. But Marcus Aurelius shows us a different way. A quieter, stronger, more courageous path. The path of the philosopher. Not the academic philosopher locked in books, but the living philosopher, the one who walks through madness with sanity intact, who lives with depth when the world has gone hollow. And to live like a philosopher is not to retreat from life. It's to engage life from a higher ground. It means asking, what is truly in my control? What is the right thing to do? What does reason demand of me right now? It means pausing before reacting, thinking before speaking, choosing meaning over noise. And most importantly, it means living as if your soul mattered more than your image. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but he lived like a servant to truth. He had power, but he didn't cling to it. He had suffering, but he didn't curse it. He saw the world not as something to conquer, but as something to understand. And in that understanding he found peace. That's the final victory, not domination over others, but dominion over yourself. Not escaping the world, but being in it without being of it. You don't need to be an emperor to live this way. You don't need ideal conditions. In fact, the more chaotic the world becomes, the more powerful this practice is. When everyone else is panicking, your calm becomes revolutionary. When everyone else is chasing approval, your integrity becomes rare. When everyone else is lost in distraction, your presence becomes medicine. But this life requires courage. The courage to be misunderstood, to be quiet in a world that rewards noise, to stick to your principles when it would be easier to follow the crowd. Marcus wrote, "Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter." That's not simplicity, it's clarity. Most of life's drama dissolves when you stop needing to control things you were never meant to. You do the right thing, you accept the outcome. Then you move on. This is how you become emotionally invincible. Not by building walls, but by living with purpose. Not by avoiding pain, but by seeing it as training. Not by escaping chaos, but by becoming the stillness inside it. That's the final victory. That's the life Marcus Aurelius invites us into. So ask yourself, what would my life look like if I stopped needing the world to validate me? What would change if I chose reason over reaction, virtue over victory, peace over popularity? You already have everything you need. The fortress is within you. The chains can be broken. The victory is yours to claim. Live it.